just waiting for the go live.
Says live here.
Sizzle.
Yep,
Okay.
we are live.
Well, I'd like to call this special meeting of the Township of Georgian Bay Council to order at 6 in the morning. And I would say one of the first things we have to do is my land acknowledgement statement. We want to acknowledge that we are on the lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples. They continue to care for this land. They continue to shape the Township of Georgian Bay. And we want to show our respect. Hundreds of years after the first treaties were signed, they remain relevant today in guiding our decisions and actions. We must remember that we are all treaty people. And I'm also going to add that I spent the afternoon taking an Indigenous awareness training program that was absolutely excellent, as did a number of our staff members, and we're going to try to get it arranged for more folks, because I think it's extremely important that we continue our education. And all I need from Ms. Boutiette is a nod that there's something in our budget for further training in the coming year. I see that nod. With that, I'll allow the meeting to continue then. Thank you. Megwitch. So I must ask Council if there's any declarations of pecuniary interest before we go any further. Councillor Cooper.
I would just like to, I don't have anything other than to remind the mayor at 6 in the evening, not in the morning.
Did I say AM?
You said 6 in the morning.
Well, I'm glad somebody's paying attention. Thank you very much. According to my clock, it's 6:02 p.m. at the moment. We've been at this for 12 hours now. Moved by Councillor Bocek, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved, the council adopts the special agenda of November 24th, 2020 as circulated. All those in favor? All right, and that has passed unanimously. Thank you. And we're about to have Ms. Boutiette make a presentation, but I want to remind everybody that what we appreciate those who are attending and those who are also just observing, if not actually attending, quote unquote, in this Zoom system. And we're looking forward to whatever input you would like to provide to us. Ms. Boutiette will provide to us an overview of the draft 2021 budget for the Township of Georgian Bay. No decisions regarding the budget will be made during this meeting, and no resolutions or direction to staff will be provided. This is an opportunity for council to hear from our constituents. In other words, councillors will be wearing our ears today much more than our mouths. Before we open the virtual floor for comment, I'm going to ask Ms. Boutiette to present the draft 2021 operating budget, and that will then be followed by a public comment period. Ms. Boutiette, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I am pleased to be here with all of you tonight and presenting this town hall type meeting, which is also a special meeting of council. So as you mentioned, the purpose of this meeting is to summarize the 2021 operational budget. It's also an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions. I will admit up front that I may not have all the answers, but if you follow up with an email that includes a reminder of your question, I would be pleased to respond with the best information I can find. And if that information is relevant for council decision, I will make sure that the council is aware in my next budget report of the questions and answers that were relevant. So in other words, if it's just to clarify something that council is already aware, it may not be included in the subsequent report. But if it's a question that council needs to consider, it will definitely be included in the next report. The easiest way to get a hold of me would be to send me an email. And instead of spelling out my whole email, because it is complex, really the best way to get a hold of me is through accounting@gbtownship.ca, and that email will come again at the end of the slide, so you can write it down. So when council developed the 2021 operational budget, we focused on 5 key areas, and they kind of come back year after year, but I wanted to emphasize some of the items that were included or considered during the 2021 operational budget. The first one being infrastructure investment. Council has agreed to invest $1.7 million of capital contribution from tax levy in line with the 2014 asset management plan, and that's the amount that was scheduled to be part of tax related levy for capital for 2021. So some of you may ask what is included in this 2021 capital budget. That has not been presented to council yet, and I apologize. I intended to bring it forward earlier. I want to make sure that all the data from capital is captured properly to bring forth to council in order to be in line with the asset management plan. However, the amount that is proposed in the operational budget does come from a capital planning, and if it's not used for capital work in 2021, it would be transferred to capital reserves to be used for future capital investments. So it's kind of a, funding the capital deficit that we currently have and known that it's existed for quite some time. So the 2020 asset management plan is also in the works. So council did commit to that back in 2019 and also confirmed in 2020 with a grant application that was done through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So council is aware that a 2020 asset management plan will be presented in 2021, which will have and include our long-term financial forecast, which will be 10 years or more. So it will make capital planning in 2021 and in the future a lot easier. And this plan will now be based on software and will make it even easier to adapt for changes, work done, or conditions, or even service levels moving forward. The second item is reserves and reserve funds. So council is committed to maintaining a healthy level of infrastructure, which are capital and operational reserve. In 2019, reserves were over $6.7 million. We anticipate that the reserve balance at the end of 2020 will be approximately $7 million. The 2021 operating budget is scheduled to use up $510,000 of working fund reserves. The third item here is debt management. In 2019, debt was at a level of $3 million. The annual principal and interest payments of $220,000 required to service the long-term liabilities are well within the annual debt repayment limit prescribed by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing do a calculation annually, and they believe that the maximum of debt repayment we could afford in a year is $1.6 million. So our $222,000 of debt repayment, which includes principal and interest, is well within those limits and that maximum. So there are no concerns in terms of debt management. The fourth item is revenue sources. So township staff are always on the lookout for revenue sources of all types. In 2021, provincial and federal governments will fund some operational and capital endeavors, including the OMPF, which similar to the past, and we just received notice that of our OMPF allocation. We use OMPF, which is Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, to support operations, and also some services that were handed down by the province way back years ago. FCM, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, I already spoke about it. We're going to get some funding for asset management project. We also have funding from the federal and provincial government, as well as a private partner for our Honey Harbor project. So that's ongoing. And same as in prior years, we will have access to federal gas tax funds. I also want to mention that at the last meeting, Council has endorsed an alternative revenue study should the township be successful in their phase 2 of the Safe Restart funding application. So this is just another means of showing how Council is devoted to ensuring that revenue sources are stable for the municipality beyond only taxation income. And the fifth item is operating costs. So Council so far has been put in a situation, and they have made very difficult decisions in providing guidance for the 2021 operational expenditures. So this little schedule is not the first time we see it. I thought it was important to include it here to show a little bit about tax changes and how they relate to assessment. So I have a little video I would like to show today. So I'm going to put that on screen, and the video is about how property taxes are calculated. And I think this simple video shows the correlation between assessment and taxes way better than I could.
Julie, is there any sound with this?
Yes, there should be.
Got nothing?
I'm guessing.
Maybe hit the volume on the video.
The video is loud. I'm wondering why it's not sharing. Okay, let's try this again.
Okay, I want to explain to you how your property taxes are calculated based on how much your home is worth. Imagine there's a town that only has 3 homes, and they're each worth a different amount. The total cost to provide all of their town's services is $1,000. This is collected through property taxes. Each homeowner pays property taxes based on how much their home is worth. So, the value of all the homes are added up and divided by the town's cost, which gives us the tax rate. This tax rate is applied to all the houses to get enough money to pay for all of the services. So, each homeowner pays according to how much their house is worth. Every 4 years, the houses are reassessed. Let's say all 3 properties have gone up equally in value. If we go back to our calculation, the total cost of services hasn't changed, but the total property value has increased. When this happens, there will be a decrease in the tax rate. Now, when we apply that new rate on all the homes, everyone still pays the same. Let's recap. property taxes are based on what a home is worth. If reassessments all increase equally, then everyone pays the same taxes as before. Now, let's say another 4 years has gone by and these homes are reassessed. During this time, the house on the right became more valuable in the market than the other two. Okay, so time for a little more math. The total value of all the homes have increased, which means the town has to calculate a new tax rate. With this new tax rate, the first two homes will actually pay less than the home on the right that was reassessed at a higher value. Since the cost of services hasn't changed, the town doesn't need to collect more property taxes. However, since property taxes are based on a home's value, those taxes could potentially go up or down based on the rest of the homes. So, what happens when the cost to provide services goes up? Well, it means more property taxes need to be collected from every home and a new tax rate is calculated. To get the new rate, we take that amount that the town now needs and divide it by all the property values. The new rate is applied to all the homes, and now everyone has to pay the new tax amount to continue to fund all of the services. So, let's review. 1. Property taxes are based on the value of a home. When homes are reassessed equally, each homeowner will pay the same amount proportionately as before. 2. When homes are reassessed at different values, each homeowner will pay a different amount proportionately based on how much their home increased in value. 3. When the town's cost to provide services increases, a property tax increase, then everyone pays their share proportionately across the board. And that explains the relationship between property value and property taxes.
So as the video shows, there are sometimes misconceptions that people believe that taxes go up because their assessment went up, or vice versa, the taxes went up and it's council's fault. So what I wanted to show with this video is that the truth is it's a combination of both. It can be assessment based and it can be because the cost to operate the township has increased. So if there's a huge shift between the assessment types, and then there could be assessment changes that would affect how your taxes. Long story short, is taxes should be considered as pieces of a pie. So if somebody pays less, then ultimately somebody else pays more. So I'll come back to assessment and related 2021 impacts in a few slides. Does anybody have questions on this slide so far? So this is the 2021 budget process. I will not discuss this slide in great length, but rather I'll refer you to the budget process that was detailed at the July 14th, 2020 report that was labeled FIN 2020-16. This is the one we've been waiting for. So I want to draw your attention to the column that has a box around it. So that is our 2021 requested budget. And you can see that the total revenues and the total expenditures are in line. Therefore, we have a balanced budget. The subsequent columns, so the budget variance column, shows the difference between the 2020 approved budget and our 2021 requested budget. And the last column is our budget variance. The biggest change from prior year on the revenue side are the changes in capital levy, the anticipated large revenue from road closure, and increase in annual grants. The biggest changes on the expense side is the related transfer from the road closure revenues into reserve, increase in IT costs due to upgrades and modernization, and increase in donations and grants to external organizations. I just want to reiterate that council and staff worked very hard to obtain a balanced budget, and I will give you 1 minute to review the summary.
Just for clarification, Ms. Boutier, when you say road closures, you mean those are road projects that were completed?
So those are road closure revenues. So when a road is requested, either a shore road allowance or a road that people want to procure the road allowance, those we anticipate that in 2021 we're going to have a huge increase, probably due to the fact that a lot of them couldn't get them in 2020, and we will be in a position to process them properly in 2021. And also the related, so we didn't want to record all of those in revenues for the 2021 year without transferring a big lump of that money into reserves for future operational projects.
Okay, thanks very much.
There are no other questions on this slide, and if anybody has questions, I can come back to this slide later. I will carry on with the presentation, and we can come back to this slide if and when there are any questions. So the assessment growth 2021. So we just watched a little video that says, you know, MPAC does a reassessment every 4 years. Well, guess what? 2020 was the year that MPAC was supposed to reassess the properties. So we should have had for 2021 assessment values from January 1st, 2020. That is not going to happen due to COVID, and we are going to remain at the 2016 assessment values for 2021. So these are wordage that were in communications from MPAC. Also, it was a little difficult to determine the exact tax impact of the proposed capital levy changes, as the new assessment forecast file was not ready. So they delayed their new assessment or growth file till December 4th, 2020. We've reviewed the building permits submitted in 2020, and we don't believe that the changes will have a huge impact on our taxation revenues, and therefore we have not included them in our estimates for the proposed levy changes. So in the last two budget reports, there was a section that discussed capital levy, and I know that we didn't talk about it in length, but this is where I'm going to take the moment to explain it. So in the past, the capital levy was increased by a prorated amount. So whatever the changes in the capital contribution was applied to the prior year's capital levy amount. So it increased by, you know, sometimes 3% or whatnot, depending on how much the contribution to capital from the tax levy was. It never truly represented council's investment in capital from operations. So I don't know where the initial number came from, and I did some research and I could not find anything. So what I'm proposing is that we realign the capital levy with the actual capital investment that we make in the current year. So this realignment would show council's commitment to local infrastructure while we're remaining vigilant to the taxpayers. So this is where council would be in a good position to say we're investing in an increase in the capital levy, but we've committed to not increase your general levy. So it is anticipated that the 2021 taxes would be increased by $6.43 for the average medium non-waterfront property. So that's an assessment value of $169,000, and about $16.89 for the average or medium waterfront property, assessed at around $444,000. You want to?
Jesus.
So on this slide, there is the 2021 organizational structure. This was brought forward at all of the drafts presented so far. The reason I bring this forward as part of the 2021 budget or any budget bylaw is that the human resources or the human asset that is involved in operating a township represents 42% of the overall budget. So I believe it's significant enough to be talked about and to be emphasized. This percentage, so 42%, is in line with most municipalities in Ontario. We just wanted to show that even in a COVID or pandemic situation, local governance services are essential and need to continue and even improve at a very fast pace. In total, the Township of Georgian Bay has 50 full-time equivalent staff. What that means is that, for example, 4 summer students may count as 1 full-time equivalent. So even though there may be more than 50 positions that you see on the board, it represents 50 full-time equivalent. I would also like to note that even though most staff report to just one person, there are a lot of crossovers in services, and staff have and continue to reduce silos by working in harmony. So this slide is a quick representation of 2021 one-time projects that should be excluded when comparing year over year. So you can see that most projects are almost net. So except, for example, the road closing revenue. So we anticipate 600 to be brought in, but 500 to be put into reserves. And therefore, the total impact of one-time operational projects is an outflow of $10,200. So this, Mayor Coutier, is where you still have, where you mentioned you still have the opportunity to make decisions. If any one of these one-time projects you would not want to move forward, or you have other things that that I may not have identified, still opportunity between now and then to ensure they make it into the budget bylaw. This slide is the one that I think we worked very hard on. It was to get the grants and donation, and I wrote approved in principle because we haven't passed the bylaw yet. But this is where I think there has been council consensus on the different organizations that council will fund. And last but not least, so 2021 reserve changes. So in 2020, council elected to pull 460 out of the working fund reserves to maintain a low tax increase. This amount was not required to be used due to in-year savings. Therefore, council has permitted the use of $510,000 out of the working fund reserve to ensure that the general tax levy sees a 0% increase. Reserves are an interesting financial items in the eyes of senior levels of government. Should the township's reserve balance be too high, funding will be allocated to townships or municipalities that are more in need. If our reserve balances are too low, we will not have the funds to leverage against funding opportunities, as most of the time they are only partially funded, 1/3, or any other combination of percentages. So reserve balancing also has to take into account asset management and the future state of the township's asset. You know, we can't decide to build another asset when we have something that will be crumbling in the next 5 years. So long story short, the proper level of reserves is a complex formula, and there is no perfect amount. In my opinion, the township's reserves are not even close to funding the infrastructure deficit, but are in a good position to capitalize on federal and provincial funding opportunities. So that concludes my presentation. So if there are any questions, there's my email in full and also the accounting email, which is maybe a little bit easier to ensure that there's no typos.
Well, Ms. Pittiette, thank you very much for that presentation. It's greatly appreciated and I think quite informative. It's very difficult to take a complex, I don't know how many page budget and reduce it down to a few slides and overview, but I think you did a very good job. But now is the opportunity for the public, and I believe Ms. Way, you'll coordinate having any member of the public who wants to make comments joining us.
Yeah, so if there's a member of the public who would like to ask a question, I ask now that you raise your virtual hand, in which case then I will immediately move you over into the meeting, or alternatively, there is a Q&A box at the bottom and I can read your question. So I'll give them a couple minutes if they'd like to raise their hand or ask a question. I'm not seeing any action at this point in time. Perhaps Julie would like to take questions from members of council, if there's any.
Councillor Bocek.
Julie, thanks for the presentation. And to most of us, it was simplistic enough that we have a little bit of a grasp on what you're doing there. The question I have is, every year at budget time, we see figures of property assessments that aren't realistic, as an example. And that would be in your example where off the water home is worth 160,000 and an on water home is worth 400,000. So it gives the impression to our constituents, you know, if your taxes were $1,100 as it showed there, that they're going to stay that way. Just wondering why we don't use realistic. I don't think you could even buy a bunkie for 110,000. I'm wondering why we don't use realistic figures, say inland at 450 and the water at 750, to give people a better understanding of where their taxes are going to be. I'll leave it to you. Thank you.
So through you, your worship, keep in mind that these are evaluated at January 1st, 2016. And that is the key date here for these assessments. And you could know the retail market in and out, but you got to think back. We're still operating as if we're January 1st, 2016. And the numbers that I pulled were actually median and average property. So that's where the bulk of the properties sit in that class. So there would be some that are at the extreme end and at the extreme end on both sides, but those are actually median average properties that include the whole sum of properties in that class.
Thank you for the explanation. I appreciate that. I was thinking that these were 2021 values and they'd be completely out of whack. Thank you.
On that note, through you, your worship, if I could talk a little bit about MPAC. So if you disagree with your assessment value, and again, as you're talking to constituents, because I know all of you do, keep in mind that January 1st, 2016 date. If anybody disagrees, they can file a request for reconsideration. And MPAC has made it very clear that if your request for reconsideration is because of a drop in value due to COVID, it will not be processed because of that key date of January 1st, 2016. COVID didn't exist then. We're still based on that assessment date. So it's just not to discourage people, they can still file it. It's just pretty clear that unless you can make a case of why your value is off at January 1st, 2016, you won't have a case to get your assessment reduced.
I think if I may follow up on that for a moment, is that the impact has made it very clear a year ago that assessments, they expected assessments in 2020 to go up significantly across the province, and including our area, and that and actually I think in our area a lot of values went up even more because of COVID, not down. So you may have sticker shock when the eventual numbers come out, but as that little video said, if everybody else has an equal sticker shock, you'll be paying your same share of taxes. So, but we'll cross that bridge when it comes. Councillor Rienko, I think I saw your hand.
No, that was the point I was going to make. If you talk to the real estate people, they can't keep houses on the market. They're just selling so quickly. So it's good that we didn't get an impact assessment this year. And hopefully we don't get one for 2021. Maybe by 2022, prices will come down because of COVID. So I'd rather do it after COVID than during COVID.
Okay, it looks like one of our attendees has departed, or has that been transferred? I don't see anybody being transferred over, and I still don't see any hands up or comments. So, Councillor Bochek, you had another question?
Yes, again to our Director of Finance. In past years, we've always supplied an office space for MPAC to come in and hear arbitration. Obviously, in a year of COVID, that's not going to happen. So what would be the format if somebody did want to challenge the 2016 assessment? Obviously, it's not going to be face-to-face in the office. Where and how would that take place?
Again, through you, Your Worship, the first step is a request for reconsideration. And for sure, if somebody wants a more personal touch, they can get a hold of myself or our tax and revenue clerk, and we could definitely schedule a virtual meeting with our MPAC representative.
All right. I'm sensing that maybe we're coming towards the end of this meeting. Moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved, the Council adopts bylaw 2020-095, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the November 24th, 2020 special council meeting. All those in favor? And that is carried. And before I move the last one, I will say thank you very much to our members of the public who observed this meeting as attendees, and certainly to those who observed just on YouTube or what have you without an attendee status. We appreciate it. And if you have any further questions, the faces that are looking at you, I'm sure, be willing to take them. And with that, be it resolved, the council does now adjourn at 6:39 p.m. until Tuesday, December 15th, 2020 at 10 a.m. or at the call, shouldn't that be 9 a.m.? Or at the call of the chair. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much, everyone.